So, Charlie, do you accept the View's apology?
I mean, regardless of whether or not I accept it, the question is, do our students accept it? That's really what's at heart here. They went after our 5,000 students at our event there of high school and college kids. And look, I get attacked all the time. People say false things. I'm a public figure. But when you go after 16 and 17-year-olds that travel from across the country that then have to live for the rest of their life with a shadow over them because someone at ABC says that they might be linked to neo-Nazis. But look, what did it take for us to get to the point of an apology? We had to threaten a lawsuit, Jesse. And by the way, we're still entertaining it. We're talking to some of the best lawyers out there that are experts in this. And as you know, these things can be very complicated. There's a lot of facts and circumstances around it. But we're not going to let this go because you should not be able to smear 5,000 high school and college kids and then just be able to walk away with it. And the reason they felt they needed to do that, Jesse, is because if they told their audience the truth, that when gas is the most expensive it's been, flights are super expensive, that 5,000 kids decided to spend a weekend in summer traveling across the country to go hear from conservative speakers, maybe the audience of The View would think twice about all of their ideas. That's why they felt so compelled to try to smear our wonderful summit.
Consider this a well-liked discussion show during the day. A self-assured television host and a group of students were abruptly thrust into the center of a firestorm. It all began when the show's viewers decided to target a conservative student, organization called Turning Point USA. However, they went one step further and targeted over 5,000 young people who attended their event, including teenagers, high school students, college students, and many of them who traveled across the nation on their own dime and came solely to hear speakers discuss politics and values.
Kirk took issue with this depiction of his organization. Kirk maintains that Turning Point USA is not affiliated with anti-Semitism or white supremacist. In a strongly worded tweet, the 28-year-old stated, "Talking to lawyers, many think we have a strong case. You cannot smear minors as and get away with it. It impacts them for the rest of their life. Hashtag sue the View." That's when TPUSA went all in. The organization changed its profile pic on Twitter to hashtag sue the View, posted a number of tweets condemning The View and demanding.
Charlie Kirk, the face of Turning Point USA, didn't take this lightly. He wasn't just angry that he received criticism, he was incensed that these young people, the majority of whom were under 21, were being disparaged on national television. He stated bluntly, "These kids now have to carry a public stain tied to a lie, all because someone at ABC threw out a reckless comment." The moment that set the fuse on air came when it was suggested that these students might somehow be linked to neo-Nazi groups. Before we continue, please remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel, as it truly helps us grow and bring you more incredible stories like this. He wanted accountability not for himself, but for the students who trusted his organization, and now had their reputations dragged through the mud. Now, let's continue. And just when you thought it couldn't get more explosive, in addition to criticizing political opinions, Sunny, the presenter, chose to take aim at illiterate white women, directly while seated at the table on The View. Her statement that women without college degrees made up a large portion of Donald Trump's supporters was followed by a smug jab that made it apparent that she views a lack of formal education as a sign of incompetence. However, this is where it became personal for many viewers. Not only did the viewers disagree with her, but many also felt insulted because, let's face it, not everyone who didn't attend college is stupid.
Nothing else to talk about. Maybe you should get the lawyer that worked on that Covington Catholic school case. What was that, a $200 million settlement? I think, Charlie, you could use the money, and your students definitely could too.
It appeared more like a campaign advertisement combined with a demolition derby than a rebuttal. Every frame was intended to make Sanani Hostin look foolish, and every sentence was honed like a dagger. He didn't merely disagree with her viewpoint. She set them on fire and threw them into the algorithm for the internet to consume, and the timing couldn't have been more ideal. Kirk's video was going viral hours after the show aired, and Twitter was on fire in a matter of minutes. While Sunani was still seated under the studio lights, TikTok makers were remixing it into 15-second shortcuts, and YouTube replies were falling like dominoes. From a completely different zip code, Kirk had taken over the narrative. It was a modern media battle, and he knew exactly how to win, not with facts or fairness, but with flash speed and total online dominance. What's even scarier for the public to see is that he made her appear to lose a debate without even being present.
We begin with a shocking apology just a short time ago from the ladies of The View to Turning Point USA. A war of words broke out after the conservative group was rallying the next generation of voters at its youth summit in Tampa, Florida this weekend. And the liberal panel just couldn't help themselves. The group sent a scathing cease and desist letter after hosts on The View suggested that Turning Point had embraced neo-Nazis who showed up outside the...
This whole situation wasn't actually about who was correct. Rather, it was about who appeared to be in charge after Kirk's video was posted online. Sonani host abruptly stopped looking like the assured legal analyst we're used to seeing. Her posture changed, her tone became shakier, and her smile began to feel forced, drawing attention from people, and not in a positive way. The internet doesn't care about subtleties or taking the time to explain things. It only cares about how someone looks while taking a hit, and Sunny looked shaken, not angry, not flipping tables. Her eyes darted toward the teleprompter as if it provided an escape route, but this wasn't Real Housewives, it was far worse. It was that silent breakdown where you're trying so hard to keep it together but your face keeps letting you down. "How did this go so wrong?" she asked in a shaky voice. The concepts were no longer being debated online. Instead, slow-motion videos showing her blinking too quickly and fidgeting while looking about began to spread like wildfire. Politics had given way to optics, and the optics claimed she was steamrolled.
Point conference, were in the front of out there in front of the conference with anti-Semitic slurs, and the.
I think it's important that every single person that attended that turning point, every Republican speak up against these against the Nazi flags.
When a well-known host like Sunny, who is polished and experienced, begins to visibly unravel on air, that's the kind of content the internet eats for breakfast. This is where things got really ugly after the on-air comments linking Turning Point USA students to neo-Nazis. Charlie Kirk didn't just destroy her argument, he broke the armor of her entire media persona. The group went to court instead of simply being irate. Not a warning, not a polite request, but a legal threat. A cease and desist letter was issued directly to the Viewpoint. The message was clear. You don't get to disparage 5,000 youth and then act as if nothing had occurred. The fact that these kids had to work so hard to get there, and that the cost of the flights and gas was so high, made it worse.
On Monday, we talked about the fact that there were openly neo-demonstrators outside the Florida Student Action Summit of the Turning Point USA group. We want to make clear that these demonstrators were gathered outside the event and that they were not invited or endorsed by Turning Point USA. A Turning Point USA spokesman said the group, quote, 100% condemns those ideologies, and said Turning Point USA security tried to remove the neo-Nazis from the area but could not because they were on public property. Also, Turning Point USA wanted us to clarify that this was a Turning Point USA summit and not a Republican Party event. So we apologize for anything we said that may have been unclear.
When a well-known host like Sunny, who is polished and experienced, begins to visibly unravel on air, that's the kind of content the internet eats for breakfast. This is where things got really ugly after the on-air comments linking Turning Point USA students to neo-Nazis. Charlie Kirk didn't just destroy her argument, he broke the armor of her entire media persona. The group went to court instead of simply being irate. Not a warning, not a polite request, but a legal threat. A cease and desist letter was issued directly to the Viewpoint. The message was clear. You don't get to disparage 5,000 youth and then act as if nothing had occurred. The fact that these kids had to work so hard to get there, and that the cost of the flights and gas was so high, made it worse.
Welcome back. In Monday's conversation about Turning Point USA, I put the young people at the conference in the same category as the protesters outside. And I don't like it when people make assumptions about me, and it's not any better when I make assumptions about other people, which I did. So, my bad. I'm sorry.
Okay.
So, the state,
Turning Point USA hosted a riveting event in Tampa, Florida called the Student Action Summit. Outside of the event were individuals waving flags and engaged in other activities. Well, on Monday's show, members of The View made a few comments about it.
The conservative group Turning Point USA has condemned the group of and said they have nothing to do with the organization.
Yeah, but where was DeSantis is what I want to know.
But you let them in.
President, open the
You let them in and you knew what they were.
Right.
So you are...
However, in spite of everything, they invited college students and teenagers from all over the nation to attend this conservative summit. They weren't rioting or brandishing hate signs. They were there to listen to speakers, join a movement, and learn. Instead of receiving recognition for their commitment, they were grouped with a fringe group that wasn't even present at the event. Kirk made it obvious that the event was a turning point because they didn't invite those extremists. In fact, they attempted to have them removed, but were unable to do so because the protesters were on public property. Nevertheless, the hosts of The View continued to paint them all with the same false image, and Kirk wasn't going to tolerate it. He called it what it was, a purposeful smear of her.
Disgusting, gross elitism and her complete out-of-touch nature with respect to the rest of the world. Sunny Hostin goes on The View and decides now would be a great time to dump all over the so-called uneducated.
What we did not have is white women who voted about 52%, right, for Donald Trump. Uneducated white women, is my understanding. You have Latino men actually voting more for him, and you have and black men was not the story. We're not the story here because they voted almost 80% for the vice president.
Right.
Just because you didn't go to college doesn't mean you're stupid, and it doesn't mean that you don't have wisdom. You can go to college and get a bunch of irrelevant facts about how men can allegedly give birth or whatever
And if the media believed they could simply throw out baseless accusations and move on, they were about to discover how mistaken they were. And here's the part that hit like a wrecking ball. Sunny Hoon wasn't ambushed. Nobody surprised her. On set. There wasn't a heated guest in her face. This wasn't a chaotic, messy live segment. It was just her, the camera, and the echo of Charlie Kirk's viral video, which was playing on the internet everywhere. He didn't even need to show up. His words, which were expertly edited, hit harder than any in-person confrontation could have. While The View continued to follow its normal format, panel discussion, a few digs, and then Kirk went full scorched earth, ridiculing her snobbery, tearing at her worldview, and portraying her as wholly removed from the common American. He did. This as if her ideology owed him rent money.
How do you like the so-called uneducated now, Sonny?
Yeah, and again, by the way, rarely do you get the answer to a question in the question. And her whole question is exactly why there was a rebellion against them.
Yes.
Listen, just because you didn't go to college doesn't mean you're stupid, and it doesn't mean that you don't have wisdom. I always differentiate between knowledge and wisdom. You can go to college and get a bunch of irrelevant facts about how men can allegedly give birth or whatever they teach. I mean, or about North African lesbian poetry. Okay, that's fine.
I suppose the movie did more than simply critique her position. It made her a representation of everything the conservative audience despises, including media privilege, academic arrogance, and contempt for working-class people. The moment the Ray video went viral, it wasn't just trending, it was taking over social media. Reaction channels were ablaze with comments, and viewers weren't just seeing Sunny host. They were also watching her wriggle, and they adored it. The worst aspect was that she was unable to defend herself properly because when someone becomes a meme on the internet, they cease to be a person and instead become a target, which is exactly what Sunny had become before the headlines appeared. Loud jeering and slogans like Charlie Kirkins' daytime delusion and Sunny host hit with reality brick-clogged timelines are used everywhere. The subreddits became a feeding frenzy. As all of this was happening online, something odd occurred in the studio itself. The energy dropped, the conversation stalled, and even the audience wasn't sure when to clap or when to cringe. TikTok editors zoomed in on every tiny expression, making her blink, shift in the chair, and smile tightly. The video was looped, remixed, memed, and shared by the second.
I'll say is Sunny, do you guys thought that abortion was going to be this like quasi-zealot religious issue? I'm pro-life. If people in the audience aren't, that's fine. What I'm saying though, what gives me promise, and I think we can all agree on this, is that there are other issues that should animate and drive our politics. other than this very divisive one. And I was really encouraged by that, Megan. Very encouraged, because the media was forcing this as an up or down vote on a referendum on a highly complicated, very emotional, very personal issue. And it turned out the American people were like, yeah, actually, these other 6 things.
The uneasy tension practically leaked through the screen. Sunny, the unshakable, always poised legal commentator, suddenly looked like she was sinking. She wasn't yelling or ranting. She wasn't storming off set, but the unraveling was happening in real time through the sighs, the fidgeting, the way her confidence cracked with each word. Her calm, commanding presence had been replaced with discomfort that was impossible to hide. And all the while, Charlie Kirk, he was nowhere near the studio, was probably already popping champagne from his digital throne, watching as the internet turned his response into a cultural nuke. He didn't have to dominate the conversation in person because the internet had already decided this was a takedown. A clean, brutal, meme-fueled takedown, and Sunny was at the center of it. At this point, it wasn't even about the argument anymore. Charlie Kirk had shifted focus entirely. He wasn't just calling out Sunny's comment, she was going after everything she represented: the suit, the degrees, the media, training the image of polished, educated authority. He tore that image down like it was built out of matchsticks, and the way he did it, ruthless. He dropped another video. This one even more over the top. Dramatic music and eye-catching visuals. Slow zooms on Sunny's face gave the impression that the video was a trailer for a political takedown. But underneath all the edits, the message was very clear. People like Sunny, the polished liberal voices, on daytime television don't speak for regular Americans, and they never did. The impact was immediate. Instead of just reposting the video, viewers created reaction content by turning it into dance memes. It developed into an ecosystem rather than merely a viral video. Now, every blink and every fidget from Sunny's on-air appearance was profitable. The most brutal detail was that she never screamed or lost her temper. Her breakdown wasn't loud, rather it was silent and genuine, the kind of unraveling you can't fake. In today's blood-in-the-water world, viewers don't need a chair thrown to call it a meltdown. All they need is that one look that says, "I wasn't ready for this," and she offered them precisely that, after which she apologized. Instead of a full-fledged press conference or a tearful on-camera scene, a well-crafted message was inserted into the next show. Sunny stated that she disliked being evaluated based on presumptions and acknowledged that she had done just that to the students at the historic U.S. summit. However, it was already too late because conservative blogs had already declared it a cultural victory outside of the studio. Ed Flames behind her dubbed it the crash of credibility, were all over the place, and even TikTok got involved. Users used her facial expressions as templates for memes. Kirk's fans celebrated as though their team had won the Super Bowl. Sunny, host, whether she liked it or not, was the star of a digital train disaster in one viral video that featured her blinking over a dubstep remix. It was no longer just commentary, it was now entertainment. Charlie Kirk was glowing in the meantime, not only because his argument was successful, but also because his platform had completely taken over the story. Traditional media was trying to catch up, correcting and clarifying details, but it didn't matter anymore because the internet had already moved on, and Sunny had become the face of what happens when you underestimate how cruel, quick, and unrelenting meme culture really is. She apologized with dignity, but humiliation doesn't go viral, which is what made this all hit even harder. Charlie Kirk didn't win because he had the best argument or the most in-depth information. Rather, he won because he understood the new game's rules, and Sunny Host entered it believing that reason, law degrees, and a polished delivery were still important. However, in 2025, media battles are about who can produce the most emotionally charged, viral moment, not who is correct. With the use of a flamethrower and a smug smile, Kirk treated her more like a Twitter handle than a real person. He removed all of her complexity, reduced her to a symbol, and sent her into the algorithm. His video went viral. She came prepared with legal analysis and moral clarity, but Kirk brought a meme war and a notepad. In today's media circus, the crowd doesn't want calm discussion. They want fireworks, and she learned that lesson the hard way, living on national television while the internet clipped her blinking into 1,000 viral edits. It wasn't a fair fight. It wasn't even the same sport. And it was about survival in a digital coliseum, where the only thing that matters is who gets the crowd to cheer. Oh, the crowd was cheering for blood as the host attempted to regain control of her image. Because of the harsh reality of today's media, every awkward look and stop in her speech caused entire YouTube channels to dissect her part frame by frame, treating it like a political autopsy. Her words were no longer important. Instead, what mattered was how shaken she appeared. If you flinch on camera, you not only lose the argument, but also turn into the one who is flinching. A landscape image is crucial. Charlie Kirk didn't need a debate stage or set to execute the digital version of a drone striker remote. He hit her where it hurt the most, destroying her reputation. Her carefully cultivated brand of intelligence, composure, and credibility was broken on camera, and the internet ensured that it played continuously for years. Sunny represented a type of liberal media confidence, calm, articulate, and sure of her values. But none of that matters when your facial expressions are turned into TikToks with clown music. You can be entirely correct and still lose because the audience isn't picking up facts, they're picking up reactions, and her breakdown wasn't a one-time event. It was a viral template, a recycled reaction clip, a meme factory. Her years-long public persona was now trapped in a 5-second loop of tight smiles and blinking eyes. The harm was done, and the internet never forgets. Just when you thought it had peaked, it continued because once something like this goes viral online, it doesn't just burn, it spreads. Sunny Hostin's stumble became more than just a headline or a popular video. It became a wealth of content. Like vultures at an all-you-can-eat outrage buffet, TikTokers, Instagram meme sites, and reaction YouTubers flocked in. One maker even layered her response with circus music. Another person created a meme known as the blinking breakdown using her pause. Influencers who likely believe Karl Marx is a TikTok dancer are abruptly dismantling the morals of daytime television. In the meantime, Kirk was cruising on digital autopilot, so he didn't need to reply again because he had already gained his fanbase. They were doing the rest for him by reposting, remixing, stitching, and viewing, and they were left frantically, trying to clean up the mess with carefully worded follow-ups and legal clarifications. The internet doesn't do retractions. It cares about impact, not context. Sunny's on-air unraveling was already saved and circulating in the meme archives forever, so now we've reached the point where no one on The View was prepared for the collapse of a whole media strategy for years. They clarified that Turning Point USA never invited or endorsed the neo-Nazis protesting outside their event, and security even attempted to remove them, but they couldn't because it was public property. The audience would nod along if you spoke slowly, appeared knowledgeable, and used a little legalese, but that formula is flawed. The internet rewards chaos rather than careful reasoning, and when Charlie Kirk dropped his response, it wasn't made for fact-checkers, but rather for going viral. He didn't come with policy papers. Instead, he came with sound bites, visuals, and a punchy delivery that made people stop scrolling and the view they came up thinking. Sunny Host brought law, school logic to a meme war, which is why she was flattened. This time, they weren't just clapped back. They were run over because in 2025, if you're debating and your opponent brings meme edits while you bring a thoughtful monologue, guess who wins? In 2015, you could sip lattes, throw around some intelligent-sounding opinions, and get away with because appearing shaken online is worse than being incorrect. Sunny's moment wasn't loud or messy. Rather, it looked like defeat. And you could see it in her eyes and on the internet, which has screenshotted every frame of a digital world that moves at the speed of light. Charlie Kirk made sure Sunny would never forget the textbook she brought to a fistfight. And here is the bit that really cemented it. The show, which is known for enduring scandals, looked fragile, as if they had been caught completely off guard by the new rules of the game. Because this wasn't just a typical controversy. Rather, it was a narrative siege. The damage didn't just hurt Sunny Host's moment. It rocked the entire show. Charlie Kirk didn't just attack Sunny's word. She invaded her space digitally, flipped her authority inside out, and handed it to the internet to rip apart. The cameras caught everything. The subtle tension in her voice, the darting eyes. The posture change was like watching someone realize, live on air, that they were no longer in control, and the saddest part was she tried. You could see it. She tried to stay composed to push through the segment like nothing was happening, but her face told the truth. The blinking, the stiffness, the forced smile, it was all there. She knew the clip was already out in the world. She knew it was being edited, memed, and mocked in real time. Backstage, producers were probably scrambling, but on screen, Sunny was stuck. No rebuttal, no comeback, just the weight of 1,000,000 pixels turning her discomfort into content. She wasn't yelling. She wasn't breaking down in the usual TV sense, but her composure was cracking, and that's all the internet needed. She walked into a talk show. Charlie turned it into a battlefield, and the cameras never blinked, but she did, and that blink became legend. So now, Tsunani Host's media reputation, once solid, sharp, and unshakable, was reduced to blinking reaction clips and sarcastic remixes. A well-known voice on one of the most significant daytime programs was abruptly caught up in a cycle of her own words that were shared on all social media, and worse, she lost not because of what she said, but rather because of how it appeared. Charlie Kirk, on the other hand, was already moving on to the next. He didn't bother picking up his digital throne after watching Sunny's segment turn into a meme for content creators, trolls, and even politically incompetent influencers who joined in for the clicks. Sunny will likely recover on traditional television, where viewers are more understanding, and she might rebuild, but it won't be as simple on the internet, because it remembers the worst frame, the most awkward pause, and the slow blink that said, "Oh no, that's what gets stitched and reposted until it's burned into the culture." The conflict was always between old and new media, and the latter brought flamethrowers, rather than conservatives and liberals. Please remember to hit the like button, subscribe to this channel, and leave a comment if you liked this video. I'll see you in the next one.